Every single person makes errors daily. In any other case, if you deny the faults, we are denying the human essence of the people. She has remained mute for many years, hiding in the shadows of a Syria that is ripped apart by war and a dictatorship that is struggling for control. Assad's sister has just broken her silence and shocked everyone. This is a shocking turn of events that has just taken place. It is the sister of the president of Syria, Bushra al-Assad, who is coming out, and the revelations that she has just made have caused shockwaves to travel all across the world. To what did she respond? The question is, what does her revelation imply for the future of Syria? Keep along with us as we delve into the disturbing information that you won't be able to believe. Let's take a step back and investigate the power dynamics of the Assad dictatorship before we fully immerse ourselves in the startling truths that Bushra has revealed. Mainly because discovering its past is essential to unravel this breathtaking narrative. That is, the Assad family. The regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria has been a complicated web of power, tyranny, and necessity for survival for several decades. Imagine for a moment that President Bashar al-Assad was in charge of a family monarchy that had been in power for more than half a century. In the year 2000, he succeeded his father, Hafez al-Assad, as the leader of Syria. The combination of a virtual authority and the story of stability versus disorder served as the foundation for that rule. Syria was grounded in the philosophy of the Ba'ath Party, which promoted Arab nationalism and socialism. This ideology was the basic foundation of Syria. The first time I heard it, it was nice to my ears, but it quickly became oppressive because of the use of force. The Assad family managed to maintain its hold on power while simultaneously forming strategic connections with other minority groups, most notably the Alawites, from whom the Assad family originates. The Sunni majority was alienated as a result of this sectarian strategy, which resulted in the development of deep-seated hatred that would eventually spark revolutions. 2011 marked the beginning of the Arab Spring, which quickly spread throughout the region. The Syrian people took to the streets, demanding reform and an end to corruption, inspired by the demonstrations that took place in Tunisia and Egypt. The Assad dictatorship made the decision to respond with brutal violence rather than listening to the opposition. In the beginning, there were peaceful demonstrations, but they quickly escalated into a full-scale civil war when the opposition eventually divided into factions that were fighting each other for control. During the conflict, the Assad administration demonstrated its endurance by solidifying authority in urban centers while simultaneously demolishing alternative governance institutions that had been constructed by opposition forces. It was not only military action that was involved in this plan. On top of that, a deft exploitation of the public services industry. There are a great number of Syrians who are in dire need of stability, and the regime has positioned itself as the only realistic choice for them by controlling key resources and services such as food and healthcare. Nevertheless, it was not a stroll in the park by any means. Additional complexities were created as a result of the advent of extremist forces such as ISIS. Even while Assad's forces engaged in a fierce battle against the moderate opposition fighters, they chose to remain oblivious to the growth of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria ISIS. The narrative that Assad was the lesser of two evils and a bulwark against chaos was established as a result of this. In spite of these strategies, there were indications that the seemingly indestructible wall that Assad kept up was beginning to crack. The state apparatus was depleted as a consequence of a protracted struggle, which led to widespread corruption inside the apparatus of the government. There were a number of issues that were asked regarding whether or not the regime is capable of providing for the people over the long run as the unhappiness of the masses was simmering below the surface. There has been a change in the dynamics of international relations throughout the course of the previous several years. Although the Assad administration has been able to successfully recapture a considerable number of the territories it had lost with the assistance of Russia and Iran, significant hurdles continue to be posed by internal dissension as well as rising demands from the outside country. As the situation in Syria descended into anarchy, the impossible took place. A decision that would have a profound impact on Bashar al-Assad's life was pressed upon him and his family. What caused them to make such a sensational escape? You are underestimating the explosive potential of the truth. The most recent crisis in Syria, which turned out to be extremely dramatic, was almost like a scene from a riveting book with its intense level of drama. The long-standing reign of fear and persecution under Bashar al-Assad finally came to an end on December 8, 2024, when opposition forces seized power in a dramatic coup that sent shockwaves throughout the region and beyond. This came about as a result of the culmination of the Arab Spring. The rebel forces, who had been motivated by years of effort and sacrifice, marched into Damascus as tensions were rising in the surroundings, the core of Assad's regime, and declared victory over it. In the days running up to this momentous occasion, the atmosphere was charged with excitement and anticipation. A series of coordinated offensives had been launched around the country by rebel organizations in the weeks prior, with the goal of taking key cities such as Aleppo and Hama. After years of pent-up fury and despair among ordinary Syrians, it was as if the dam of hope had finally burst. It was as if the dam had finally broken. Rapid progress was made by the insurgents. Assad's forces, which had been stretched thin and demoralized after years of terrible conflict, are beginning to lose their grasp on power, and they are taking advantage of this situation. At the beginning of December, it was clear that momentum was building. A number of rebel groups, including Hayat Tahrir al-Sham (HTS) and the Syrian Democratic Forces (SDF), were making significant headway in their fight. Isolating Assad's forces in Damascus and shutting off his access to vital resources were the results of their seizure of crucial positions and subsequent control of those locations. As the word of these triumphs traveled throughout the liberated towns and villages, joyous celebrations broke out onto the streets. After years of being oppressed, it was a thrilling sight to see people taking to the streets, waving flags and singing chants of freedom. It was reported that opposition troops had encircled Damascus on December 7, 2024, just one day before the regime was said to have collapsed. They were getting closer and closer to their ultimate objective. People on both sides were bracing themselves for what they believed would be a definitive clash, and the tension was apparent. The command of the Syrian army was in a state of confusion. According to reports, an increasing number of troops were deserting their positions and fleeing as the rebel forces continued their determined approach. The month of December then arrived, a day that would go down in the annals of history. Rebels, fueled by a mixture of excitement and determination, surged into the capital of Damascus just as dawn was breaking over Iraq. Almost immediately, they took control of communities such as Barzeh, where they were greeted with open arms by the locals. There was a palpable sense of optimism in the air. They had the impression that they were watching a revolution take place right in front of their eyes. Images of rebel commanders announcing that Assad's regime had been overthrown were broadcast on state television. During the celebration of their newly acquired liberty, the streets were filled with applause from the inhabitants. After so many years of suffering under a system that was notorious for its brutality and persecution, it was a time that seemed unreal to me. Over the same time period, the whereabouts of Bashar al-Assad became the subject of significant conjecture. According to the reports, he had reportedly escaped the capital via plane, probably trying to find safety in Russia or another ally country. He watched as the once impenetrable leader left, and the legacy of his family was falling apart in front of him. Prime Minister Mohammad Ghazi al-Jalali acknowledged that there had been a significant transfer in power by announcing in a statement that was later released by his government officials that they were prepared to work together with any new leadership that was chosen by the people. The word of Assad's downfall traveled over the world, and people from all around the world began to express their reactions. Many people celebrated it as a win for democracy and human rights in Syria, which had been ruled by an authoritarian regime for more than half a century. Others, on the other hand, expressed concern about the potential implications of this move for the stability of a nation that is still suffering from the effects of war. The repercussions are still being felt today. While there are those who rejoice in this newly discovered liberty, there are others who are concerned about the possibility of anarchy as different groups compete for dominance in this power vacuum. After years of conflict, what does the future hold for the average Syrian? Is it possible that they will eventually find peace? Or will new conflicts emerge as a result of the efforts of various parties to fill the hole that Assad has left behind? A single name has remained a mystery, despite all of the mayhem that has taken place. It was Bushra al-Assad. Can you tell me about the part that Bashar's sister played in the overthrow of the regime? Perhaps you were taken aback by her involvement. It was Bushra al-Assad, a power player who remains mute. It is now time to concentrate on Bushra al-Assad. Now that the unexpected collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime has been brought to a close, an individual who is among the most fascinating members of the Assad family. She was born on October 24, 1960, and in addition to being Bashar's only sister, she has also a crucial role in the intricate political dynamics of Syria. As Bushra was growing up, she was raised in a family that was not only wealthy but also politically active. She was brought up in the middle of the trappings of power, as she is the daughter of Hafez al-Assad, who ruled Syria with an iron fist from 1971 until his death in the year 2000. Just for a moment, try to picture yourself as a little child in a world where your father was not only a parent but also a national figure whose choices had the potential to affect the development of history. Both her perspective and her aspirations were unquestionably influenced by this atmosphere. During her younger years, Bushra acquired a reputation for being both intelligent and determined. She worked hard to further her education and eventually earned a degree in pharmacy, a field that allowed her to feel independent and gave her a sense of identity that was separate from the political legacy that her family had left behind. But don't let that catch you off guard. She had a deep and comprehensive understanding of the inner workings of the regime. Due to the fact that she was Bashar al-Assad's sister, she was not merely a spectator in the political sector. Behind the scenes, she played a key role, frequently negotiating the difficult waters of loyalty and ambition and playing a significant role. From the very beginning, Bushra shown a profound commitment to the Assad regime. She was frequently seen as a major advisor to her brother due to the fact that she was known for her brains and forceful personality. Despite the fact that Bashar was propelled into leadership roles following the terrible murder of their brother Basil. Throughout the turbulent times, Bushra maintained a constant presence, offering advice and encouragement to those on the receiving end. As a result of her marriage to Asif Shawkat, a senior player in Syria's military intelligence, her influence within the regime was further strengthened. Assad's power was maintained by the security apparatus, and she was able to keep tight contacts with that apparatus because to this connection, in reference to her marriage to Asif Shawkat. I would want to briefly review it for you if you don't mind. Bushra al-Assad's marriage to Asif Shawkat is a story that is filled with passion, affection, and love. Both the violence and the complex Assyrian way of life are discussed. Bushra was enrolling in pharmacy school at the time, and he was a young officer in the Syrian army. This is when they first met. Their route to bliss was not without its share of obstacles, despite the fact that it is stated that they fell in love at first sight. Again, the fact that Asif was 10 years older than Bushra, and that he was married with 5 children contributed to the high level of controversy surrounding the connection. Even though he came from a poor background himself, Asif was not quite the perfect catch for the daughter of Hafez al-Assad, as the all-powerful monarch of Syria. Social class played a huge role in their lives, and the union between them caused controversy in a manner that was not particularly pleasant. Even Hafez, who came from a humble beginning and worked his way up through the ranks to become a powerful monarch, had high aspirations for his daughter. These expectations were proportional to the position that Hafez held in life. This is a love story that has been plagued by difficulties from the very beginning. According to Hafez, Asif was a man who was likely to view Bushra as nothing more than a stepping stone on his path to power, rather than as an equal partner in life. It should come as no surprise that this resulted in conflict within the family, particularly among the brothers, who are quite tender-hearted toward their sister. Basil al-Assad, Bushra's eldest brother and the apparent heir apparent prior to his death in 1994, was adamantly opposed to the connection. He believed that Asif's low rank rendered him unfit for Bushra in many different ways. He was also of the opinion that if Bushra were to marry him, it would be detrimental to the reputation of the family. On one occasion, Basil was able to catch Bushra and Asif together, and in a fit of wrath, he attacked his sister. Because of the intensity of his rage, it was clear that he placed a high value on the protection of his family's name. In an effort to achieve a permanent separation, he even ordered Asif to be placed in prison for a short period of time. This action did little more than strengthen the lovers' feelings for each other and their determination to be together. On the other hand, despite the overwhelming odds, Bushra did not give up on her feelings for Asif. Before Basil was killed in an automobile accident. In the end, Bushra was able to break free from the influence of her brother. She and Asif made a public announcement of their marriage in Italy in 1995, which was a nearly provocative act that stunned many people but opened up a completely new perspective for the newlywed pair. Within the confines of Damascus, the capital of Syria, Hafez al-Assad bestowed his blessing upon their union, which ultimately served as the turning point for Asif. The promotion to the rank of Major General was granted to him by Assad not long after the wedding. His role within the inner structure of the regime was further strengthened when that occurred. Assad's rise to power elevated him from the status of an ordinary officer to that of a prominent figure within the regime. As Bushra grew older, she became known as the Iron Lady, a title that reflected both her might and her undying commitment to the Assad dynasty. This title was bestowed upon her as she became more powerful. The function that Bushra played in the dictatorship was significantly more diverse than that of a devoted family member. Reportedly, she exerted a significant amount of influence over political decisions. Attending high-ranking meetings to discuss matters of national security and military strategy was something she did on a regular basis. Her viewpoint was taken into consideration by the government, particularly during crucial periods when it was subjected to enormous pressure from both local opposition and international criticism. In the end, Bushra al-Assad has finally spoken out after remaining silent for a number of years. On the other hand, The information that she divulges on her strained relationship with Asma, Bashar's wife, will cause you to doubt everything. In private, there was a disagreement. Relational dynamics between Bushra and her siblings. The character of Bashar in particular is quite fascinating. After the terrible death of their older brother Basil in a vehicle accident in 1994, Bashar was born 5 years later in 1965. However, he did not become a candidate for leadership until after the circumstances surrounding Basil's death. Bashar and Bushra had a strong bond with one another, particularly when they were younger individuals. Her brother's rapid rise to power was accompanied by her taking on the role of a protector toward him. Bashar assumed leadership of the family after the passing of their father, and his relationship with his sister got more complicated as a result. Although she outwardly supported him, there were allegations that tensions between them continued to exist behind closed doors. These tensions were mostly related to the duties that each individual should play within the government. Within the context of this sibling relationship, the marriage of Bashar to Asma al-Assad added a brand new dimension.